Okay, well, hello and welcome to Kitaabi baatein. I'm Abhishek, also known as Books Wale Bhaiya. My guest today is journalist Utpal Kumar, who has close to 2 decades of experience in the field of journalism, and he has worked with newspapers and media houses of repute, including NewsX, Mail Today, and The Pioneer. And today, Utpal will be discussing his book Bharat Rising, which is recently released. And all those who are, interested in whether history, geopolitics, or most importantly, in understanding how a new India is emerging, how it's shaping up, must read this book. As I was talking to Utpal, I think a lot of research has, he has taken a lot of research to understand, how India is actually changing, how it is changing, and what the future looks like. So it's definitely a work of great effort. So Utpal, congratulations on this fantastic book.
Thank you.
I would like to start with a very basic question. It's not at all uncommon for journalists to write books, but in your case, why this book?
Why this book? Maybe because we live in a world where it is important to be good, but it is even more important to be seen to be good.
Yes.
And this is possible only when one is in control or substantial control of the dominant narrative of the day. So that was the premise on which I started working on this book, and why narrative is important. I'll just give you three examples from 3 time zones for US here. Let's take example of US and USSR in this post World War II era. USA, if you look at the history, committed number of mistakes, blunders, number of coups across the world. Still, it remained a democratic power. It
Yes.
remained a power which has every right to interfere in other countries and still seemed to be a good noble power
Absolutely.
because it had controlled the narrative.
Correct.
So that was one. In Indian context, if we go in a different time zone, for example, the role of Gandhi in India's freedom struggle, for instance, again that same narrative thing comes to the fore. Because when we look at history dispassionately,
Yes.
especially history of the 1930s, 40s, we realize that by mid 30s, Gandhi was kind of
Yes.
marginalized as far as the national struggle, freedom struggle was concerned. British have by large by then decoded how to deal with Gandhi, and that's what happened when Quit India movement happened. Within at one sweep, they got hold of all the Congress leaders, and Quit India movement was a big flop. So
Yes.
they by the time they knew how to deal with Gandhi, but still, when we read today's history, it is all about Gandhi and his role. Without denying his role, Gandhi had his relevance. Gandhi also gave us a good, good face, global face. So without denying, I'm not someone who will want to disown Gandhi. Gandhi is as important as Bose is. Gandhi is as important as Sardar
Sardar
Patel
Patel.
is. So
Right.
yeah, now the third narrative I'll just put the why narrative is important and why that's why my book came into existence is, for example, the case of Ashoka. If you look at Ashoka, for instance, Ashoka the Great, automatically it comes to the fore. But when we look at closely at some of the works which Ashoka did, they were actually un-Indic in the framework, and no wonder Ashoka was forgotten,
Yeah.
completely forgotten. He was not seen as a great ruler by our own literature. But what he did, I think he could see through that the power of narrative.
Yes.
He created, he wrote Rogue Addicts and all these things, which centuries later was decoded by Prince Seth, and then suddenly he emerged as a
Yes.
kind of the great ruler.
Yes.
So narratives are very important, and narratives till the time we control the narrative, we don't control it. However good you are, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
And if you don't control the narrative, what will happen? What happened with Red Americans they were discovered as if they were to be found, and they were one of the best civilizations in the world. But still, when we read history, we say, "Oh, Columbus discovered America."
Yes.
And I was reading one of the books which said that but the Red Indian today's generation, they said, but where we lost that they had to discover
Yes.
us. But that's what narrative is.
Absolutely.
Now coming to the new India in that context, uh, Naya Bharat still has to master that art,
True. True.
of narrative setting. In fact, howsoever strong we may say in the Modi government, for me, and many people may not like me for that, but they are not that strong when it comes to setting the narrative per se. They are actually more reactive than
Yeah.
proactive in dominant narrative setting. So that's where that's where the entire thing is. And when I say this, I have a reason for that. You see the dominant global narrative about Naya Bharat. The thing will come that it is democracy is
Yes.
sliding, minorities are being attacked, liberalism is shrinking, and this kind of things happening. Now, but when you look at it statistically, and I'm a history student, so what I do is I look back at history. I will go back and say, okay, fine, Modi government may have done mistake, but what is the parameter on which we are actually
Exactly.
comparing it? So what I did, I went to the best of the liberal, icons, Nehruvian era, for instance. And you read Ramchand Guha's history book, you'll come across that India was doing great democratically
Yeah.
till the time Indira Gandhi came.
Yeah.
So his narrative is that everything was so beautiful when Nehru was there. So what I did, I put Nehru at one end and Modi at another, Nehruvian era and Modi era, and try to compare on some of the basic fundamental
Yes.
things. For instance, book banning. Now, I'm thinking, tell me how many books were banned by Modi government in 10 years? I doubt you will remember even two names.
Yeah.
But do you know that more than 2 dozen books and films have been were banned by Nehru
In fact,
government? And
the
still
amendment to
it is
constitution was the first instance wherein curbs to freedom of speech were put, that it cannot be an absolute right or absolute, you have the authority to say anything you want, which happened in somewhere around 1951, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
yeah. I'm coming to that part. In the muzzling of press freedom, for
Yeah.
instance. And I was going through, for this book also, I was going through some of the debates of, it's a wonderful debate, by the way. It's available
Yeah.
online also. People can go through on their own. The people, some of our, luminaries talking about, the pro and against this First Amendment. And some of the observations of Nehru were quite damning
Yes.
about the press, very demeaning in
Yes.
that way. Interestingly, in fact, some of the people today we call them fascist or Hindutvawadis and Hindutva icons. Like for instance, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. Look at his speech. He was vehemently against this First Amendment,
Yes.
and look at his speech, the way he came out. But again, that's what where comes the narrative setting.
True.
He became the Hindutva and someone who is against the liberal democratic culture of the country. I'll again give you another example of that. For instance, how many big personalities have been jailed, for instance, in last 10 years for saying things against Modi? Is someone, I don't remember any. But do we know that there's somebody as big as Majid Sultanpuri was in jail for 2 years
Yes.
just because he likened Modi with Hitler? Now, this was the state. When you compare this with that, or for instance, how Kerala government was dismissed just because it was not a Congress
So,
government, it was a communist government. And
yeah.
I'm not defending communist rulers of communist leaders of that time. They were actually they were making things difficult. But was that the right way to go? I
Yeah.
doubt.
I don't.
In fact, I'll conclude my argument with just one point, and I'll say that uh, the very selection of Nehru, the very selection is a prime minister was
Yes.
undemocratic. And you
Under.
see 15 people who selected him. Out of that, 12 were in favor of Sardar
Pradhan.
Patel, and just three
Yeah.
were in favor of Nehru. Yeah, three
Exactly.
were in favor of. So that's how it is. And so I think that's where my book is. I try to just put the narrative, put facts there, and let the readers decide what the fact is, truth
Absolutely.
is for them.
As you talked about history, I think Vikram Sampan mentioned in his book that unless and until the lions have their own storytellers, the historians glorify the hunters, because
Yes.
they will always justify what they did. I mean, for example, no one in the British government would ever say that the policy of imperialism as such was wrong, and and they very glorify whatever they have stolen from other countries in the museums in
They
London,
still
and
do.
they
They still
they
do.
glorify it, and
Yeah.
you have to pay a
Yeah.
very expensive ticket even now to go and see, okay, what all have we looted from the various countries in the world.
Yeah.
But coming to history, as I said, as history is always written by the winners, authored by the winners. So while this narrative would have made sense that by the time India was under the British rule, because they demeaned India, its education system, its culture, its history, as Gandhiji mentioned, the beautiful tree had fallen, and which Dharampalji wrote as a book about the Indian education
Definitely.
system. They
Yes.
demeaned everything
Yeah.
because they wanted to rule, and they wanted to rule also mentally, something which is often overlooked. Because unless and
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
you tell them, okay, you guys are not worthy of, a democratic setup or whatever, and we are the people who should rule. So this
Yes.
still, makes some sense because they were the rulers. Why is it that in independent India it took close to 7 decades to write books which, are trying to correct the wrong narrative, or the narrative which is, if not fully wrong, at least incomplete in many places?
See what happens, Vicky, is that the people who were kind of who posed least resistance to the British government, they were fighting, but were not seen as somebody dangerous. Like Savarkar was seen as a dangerous person. Bose was seen as a dangerous
Right.
person. So those who are not seen as dangerous people, they were given the power. It was
Yes.
very beautifully done. It was very, very smartly put in place. And that's why you see that for instance uh, uh, the first viceroy of the country became the very person who was the last British
Yeah.
one to rule here. And
Yes.
uh, it shouldn't have happened. And in fact, in my book, there is a fact. People may criticize Nehru for taking Kashmir to UN. I believe, and which I've written quite categorically in the book, I believe that Nehru had no option by then, because by
Correct.
then Nehru had given in to the British. He was already surrendered his own country's sovereignty by
Correct.
putting in place a British governor general in the country, and also British army chiefs were
Yes.
there. So they refused. They refused to cooperate
Exactly.
with the government. And they were playing both ways. They were playing with the Pakistanis also, and playing with us. So they refused to go in and occupy the part of Kashmir which Pakistan has occupied today. So that's the problem. Problem happened that the people who came to power, they were kind of soft. If not, I'll not use collaborators. Some people do use, but they were soft to the British.
Yes.
They also kind of seen British in a very
Positive.
progressive light. Yeah,
Yes.
progressive positive light. So for them, they didn't see anything wrong with that. They saw British as somebody who created the nation,
Exactly.
and that's what the problem is. Like the very idea of India and idea of Bharat. That's where it differs. Idea of
True.
India, what it says, idea of India. They want to say that India came to existence only in 1947.
And what is it?
Nehruji played the part. Constitution is the only thing which created this nation. This is where I have problem with idea of India. Though I like the brand India, making India is something we should keep with ourselves. But idea of Bharat, that's what takes us to the civilization roots, connects us with something
Absolutely.
which is our own, and in a very great way,
And I
fantastic
think
way.
it's
And this
again the narrative power, because their own Mark Twain said a lot of positive things about Varanasi, that even before all these civilizations
yes,
came into place, Varanasi was flourishing, was a
yes,
center of the world and whatnot. So there were who
yes,
actually realized its importance, but as you said, they could not become the dominant narratives. And
yeah,
when
yeah,
India became independent, of course, there were people largely who were kind of fascinated by the British, and many of them were apologists to what the British did. Many
yeah,
of them think that,
yeah,
okay, this was fine, this was fair. And about Nehru, it is said that while he used to think in terms of modern era and everything, but for him what was irrelevant of the past was only what was about the Hindu religion and Hindu culture.
yeah,
So he sidelined
absolutely.
that, thinking that it's all about the past, not doesn't bear much relevance to the present day world, but it was restricted to Hinduism and Hindu culture.
Absolutely, yeah, well put,
And
yeah,
right,
yeah,
when we
true, true.
say about history, so history is one example of narratives. I want to ask, which you also mentioned in your book, which was written in Sanjay Badu's his book, that about the Khan Market gang, or the Latins Delhi, as we call the liberal elite. So history was like one thing, but why is it that the Khan market consensus or the liberal elite consensus became so important for governance, that someone like Sanjay Baroji, though I have a lot of respect for him, he talked about that he met him first in Khan market in somewhere in 1980s, and Bajpayee and Advani ji had no problem, mingling with the elite of the Khan market and IIC. Why is it that it became something to be even talked about when we are talking of prime ministers, कि आप उस gang को belong करते हो, or are you accommodative to them or not? Why you think that happened?
See, I'll first categorically say that there's nothing unique about Khan market or Lutein Delhi kind of elite system. Every country has. So India too has. What makes Indian context unique is that it existed and took control for 7 decades, or more than 7 decades, and never left the power. In other
Yes.
countries, what happened? They are power for 10 years, they go out, some other people come in. Here, they continued for last 7 decades, and that's where the challenge is. That's why they are still there. And the government may change, but as I say, they still rule. They still manage to
सरकार
make the the
कोई भी
thing.
सिस्टम हमारा होता है. Exactly.
System उन्हीं का है.
Yes.
So I still it's 10 years of Modi government, but system still is. I don't think it's still they have there's some breaches have happened, but still they still influence the power
Yes.
for sure. Uh, th- that is the reason why that presents the 7 decade old this thing that gives them a lot of leverage, a lot of influence, a lot of power. And that's why, even like outsiders, like, when outsiders become prime minister, like even Narasimha Rao, who did a fantastic
Yes.
job, has not got his due, I believe,
True. True.
or Atal Bihari Vajpayee, they also, or Manmohan Singh, for instance, he was also outsider in a way. They always, insisted on seeking legitimacy from Lutein elites. They were in awe of that, the power. They wanted to be insider, as Narasimha Rao in his own book calls it the insiders. They all wanted to become insider, and so in that way, Modi was is a different phenomena. He's someone who insisted being an outsider, and he actually
Yes.
enjoyed that.
Yes.
He enjoyed that. He actually relished on the idea of being outsider. He openly said that I'm an outsider. मैं दिल्ली वाला लुटेन दिल्ली वाला नहीं हूँ. So that's where the thing is. He's the first one, and that's where this very idea that Modi challenged that that gang, as you call it. That's why you see the narrative of democratic or questions being raised on his democratic or secular credentials of Naya Bharat.
Absolutely. So coming to the about your book, you mentioned dharma, democracy, diplomacy. Coming to the dharma part, you talked about the Ram Mandir movement and why it should be looked at as a kind of revivalism of Hindu culture. It should be looked at as something which Hindus are proud of their civilization. They are only claiming what actually belonged to them. Now there are schools of thought that okay, we got Ram Mandir. Some say that we should not have even done that, but there are some who say okay, we got Ram Temple, which was very sacred to Hindus. So I think the matter should end now in terms of reclaiming temples. Some say that okay, we should stop at uh, Ayodhya, Kashi, and Mathura, and we should call it a day. Some insist on talking about reclaiming some 40,000 odd
Yeah.
structures which were mosques were built. Interestingly, the RSS Sanchalak Mohan Bhagwat ji said that we got the Ram temple and it does not make much sense to look for a shivling in every mosque. We got what we desired, we wanted. So what's your stand on what began some decades back, where it should eventually end?
Uh, uh, Abhishek, I have a different take on that. In fact, this is for me, this is not the right question at all. The right question for me should be first to accept whether the wrong has happened or not.
Yes.
Are we even accepting the fact
Yes.
that 40,000 temple have been destroyed? Are we mentioning in our books?
Right.
So first thing is we have to accept that. We have not even accepted it. And till date, our books, our NCRT books doesn't even mention that. And the way they mention as if they're apologetic
Yes.
about that. So where is the question of asking or fighting and raising movement for 40,000 temples? First thing first, we have to first come to the conclusion that destruction, demolition, and these kind of things have happened in the medieval times. And when I'm saying that, I'm also categorically saying that the blame for which should not come to today's
Yeah.
minority
Yeah.
communities or people
Absolutely.
of that. That should
Absolutely.
be absolutely. That was done by murderers for a different reason, but let's accept it. The problem we are not accepting, and it is continuing. Since the time of Muhammad Habib, the father of Irfan Habib, till Audrey Truscott. What we are doing, our historians, what are trying to do? Muhammad Habib tried to project Mahmud of Ghazni as somebody, as an economist who was in search of money. That's why he came to Somnath and
Yeah.
got the money and went back. Was that the case? That was not the case. In fact, our priests in Somnath, they offered him to take all the money, all the wealth, all the gold, but don't destroy Somnath idol. But he didn't do that. He said, this is against my this thing. So he destroyed and then took. But what our historians said, no, they just focus on the economic monetary part of it. And this continues till today. I mean, Audrey Tversky has become the spokesperson of all the
Yes.
historians today, world historians, on
Correct.
Aurangzeb, and her line of argument is just that Aurangzeb is a very secular,
Yes.
liberal
He built more
ruler.
temples than what he
Yes,
destroyed, and yeah,
and even if he destroyed, so her argument is very dangerous. She says like in Banaras, for example, she agrees that he has destroyed, but her argument is that वहाँ के पंडितों ने कुछ
conspiracy.
कॉन्स्पिरेसी कर रहे थे, गलत चीज
Absolutely.
पढ़ा रहे थे. अरे, अरे, so my point is, let's first accept the fact that
Absolutely.
temples have been destroyed. We have not even accepted it. After that thing will come reconciliation.
Yes.
So let's not jump the thing. This is a very smart way of cornering Hindus. कि भैया पहले first they will not even accept that destruction happened, and they say, oh, but 40,000 temples, how सारे जगह निकलेंगे क्या आप साथ हो? मतलब are you accepting that 40,000 temples have been destroyed? Then they will again say, no, we didn't say that. So I think let's go logically by that. I don't think so. Knowing the way Hindus behave and operate, they will go for 40,000 temples also. They might want to have some of the historical places like Kashi
Yeah.
and Ayodhya and Mathura. They are historical places. They might try to seek for that. Politics may happen 40,000, but my own take is that they might go. But my point is they will still want that
Right.
reconciliation to happen. First, acceptance that the injustice have happened, the crime have been committed. No one has even accepted the crime.
No,
So let's not
absolutely.
jump
I
the
think
gun.
that's what Pawan Verma ji said in his book, The Great Hindu Civilization, that, if something has happened in history and it has been proven well, effort should be made for its
Yeah,
acceptance. It's not to say that,
yeah.
okay, some Muslim or some Christian were responsible or something which was done in the past. It can never mean that. But at the same time, in the garb of something secular and, liberal, we cannot deny which is there, and the evidence is for everyone to see. So I think it's,
Abhishek, I was saying that is
yeah,
double crime. First the crime has happened,
right.
and second you are even
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
that no, nothing happened on
Nothing
you. आप
happened.
लोग कुछ नहीं हुआ.
Exactly.
And worse, in fact, now there is which again I talked in my book. There is now again a class of historiography has come. Now they say, oh please, Hindus shut up. It's not just Muslims who destroyed. Even Hindu rulers have
Right.
also destroyed, and they will come up with three, four very unreliable sources,
Right.
data, which I again mentioned in the book how unreliable they were, and say that Hindu rulers also destroyed the temples.
Right.
Where the reality was, what used to happen? Like for instance, if Pallava ruler goes to Chalukya kingdom, they will, with due respect, take out the murti, take the murti, and after murti is gone, it's not a temple there,
Right.
and they will take the murti and consecrate in a better, higher, more splendorous temple, and that's
Absolutely.
how they have to do it. So my point is they will just don't tell the entire thing properly, and then just try to jot the thing. So my point is, yeah, I mean, we first need to accept that crime has happened, and then reconciliation thing will take place after that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And related to temples, I think another thing which is, making the headlines is the control of temples. So only it's the Hindu temples which are under the government control, which and other, religious structures, they have their own, associations and organizations who, take care of them. So what's your take? Should the government relinquish its control, or should it, continue?
See, I think of it, it's also for the self-respect of Hindus. This gives a very simple, message that maybe Hindus are incapable of managing their own temples.
Right.
Otherwise, they no other reason. Why should government of India not manage madrasas or churches or other things? Just the Hindu temples.
Exactly.
So they still believe just like their colonial powers. British used to believe that Hindus are uh, less capable
Less
of
capable.
handling themselves or their temples. So that's one of the reason why. But my reason is something different. Why? This is a very important question. But temples for Hindus are not just for worship.
Right.
Historically, you see it. Temples have been the crux around which the Hindu society used to operate.
Right.
Materialistically also, as well as culturally, philosophically, and somewhere politically also. So temple was very important part of society's growth. The temples used to have built roads, बांध बनाती थी.
Right.
In South, we go and Chola Kingdom and all these things. There are records of that. So it was part, and there to be patron of craft and art and painting and literature. My point is, the moment you take the control of temples, then what you're doing, you're impoverizing the society, Hindu society. So that is one thing. My another problem. See, I'm still I'm all for government in Bharat. भारत में हूँ. जति if the money of temple, the temple resources and money have been utilized in a proper
Yes.
manner. Now, the Anand Ranganathan new book, says, that only 1% of the temples, temple land, the rent, only 1% of rent is collected
Yes.
every year. Only 1%. 99% gets captured by all these people who are corrupt elements. My point is, it's not even helping the nation. Had it
True.
helped the nation also, I would have still said कि चलो ठीक है यार, नेशन बिल्डिंग में हम लोग sacrifice कर देते हैं. वो तो हो नहीं रहा. It is helping the corrupt people. Only 1% is coming back to the system.
True.
So that is another thing. So it's high time. It's high time. But I think the problem also lies with us. Hindus
Yes.
per se have also not demanded very strongly. I think it's time that they need to demand. They
Of
need to
course.
wake up that for them I wrote very categorically, but for me I believe that is more important than even UCC. I put it very categorically
Right.
there, and I believe so.
Right. So coming to the, I think first I have to say that's the best response I've ever got on about the temple control. Why it should be in the hands of the people, not the government, because most of the responses usually because churches and mosques are not managed by government, so they should not manage temples as well, which I always found to be a little incomplete answer, that just because something happened with them should we practice that, or what's the exact reason. So coming to the society and governance part, diplomacy, yeah, part which you mentioned in your book about the casteism and caste system. Now, caste discrimination, unfortunately, is a reality even in contemporary India. No matter how much we
Yeah.
dislike it, or we may say that it's not an integral part of Hinduism. The sad truth is that it still exists. So, two things. One is that when we look at solutions, I think instead of looking at a proper solution, it's now becoming more fashionable to blame either Hindus or Brahmins for everything wrong happening in the country, the Brahmanical patriarchy and all that. And secondly, I think, do you think sometimes when justifying that, okay, this is not an integral part of Hinduism, are Hindus sometimes get into the denial mode कि हमारे religion का integral part नहीं है ये तो, and we just try to whitewash ki discrimination है and all that. What you think the scenario is, and what is the solution?
First and foremost, we should be brave enough
Yeah,
to accept that. Yeah, uh,
absolutely.
it has caused this thing, distress. It has certain community were discriminated because of that. There's nothing wrong in accepting everything.
Absolutely.
Nothing is perfect. Even our gods are not flawless. They have
Absolutely.
flaws. The thing is, the best thing about Indic society is that it always strives for the best. It never has put the forward that this is the perfect template and do it. No,
True.
we are
True.
always striving.
True.
So let's accept the thing that, yeah, the mistake has happened, and we should try to
Yes.
correct it in whatsoever.
Yes.
But my problem with some of these people who raise the issue is that they are the same people who are also against the very idea of
Yeah.
Hinduism. So now they put forward the excuse of caste to actually target
Yes.
Hinduism. For instance, I'll just give a Hindutva and Hinduism debate also. We often see happening.
Yeah.
They are same people who has their doubts, who absolutely take antithetical position on Hinduism. They are the one who also raise very strongly the
Yes.
Hindutva cause. That's where I get jiffy about. Uh, I think we should look into the problem. There is problem in the caste system has created a problem, but we should be, as Vivekananda said, we should look at the issue more dispassionately, more
Absolutely.
deeply. Why did caste system came, for instance? I believe when I look back at caste system and I look at the Hindu civilization in the last 1,000 years, Hindu civilization also survived because of it got uh, uh, into that caste system where they could just survive themselves in a smaller unitary
Yes.
societies in some way. That's what happened. And Keslal also writes in his book that after Muslim attack, the number of castes proliferated in a large number. So let's look into that instead of just killing the entire tree. It's a beautiful tree. Hinduism is a
Exactly.
beautiful tree. Instead of killing that, we should just find out where the problem is. Let's prune it. Let's cut it, and let's make it stronger. I think that's the right way I believe to go. Instead of just saying that caste, Hinduism is not just about caste for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is what Rajiv Malhotra ji mentioned in his book, that when Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar criticized, he made many critical points about Hinduism, and he said that we agree with Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar on all these points, because unfortunately that has been
Hmm?
a reality. However, we respectfully disagree on one point, that ending the caste system should not mean ending the Hindu religion or Hinduism as such. But unfortunately, as I said, when we talk of solution, somehow the solution is like, okay, we dismantle this entire Hinduism thing or Brahmanism thing and all. And as noted, sometimes we do not even realize that many times atrocities have been committed on Brahmins themselves. The
Yeah,
best example is after Mahatma Gandhi was murdered and there were
yeah, yeah,
riots against Brahmins. So when we say
yeah,
that caste discrimination has been there, which unfortunately is there, uh, even Brahmins at times have been at the receiving end. So,
yes.
and yes,
In
more.
fact, I wrote about that part also. Like, this entire notion of Brahman only being the perpetrator
Yes,
is absolutely first a colonial creation, because Brahmins, like temples, where the symbol of Hinduism. You cut them out, it's very easy to cut the entire tree, this beautiful tree
absolutely.
as you call it. So that's why they want to target, and this remained kind of became a state policy post independence, and because the left liberals took control of the system, especially in the 60s and 70s and after that. So yeah, true, that's how it happens. True.
True. So one of the things which you also mentioned in your book when you talked about the consensus in the previous decades is that the system which was created, and you talked that it should not be replaced by a system of the BJP or the NDA. So a Congress system, we found certain flaws in terms of this Latins gang or whatever, but this should not be replaced by a system which is equally bad. So that there may be, narratives being peddled in under the current government, but we should ideally stick to the truth. That is what is most important. Do you see any chances as of now or emergence of a system which is likely to go wrong? So after the wrong Congress system, we may end up having a wrong BJP-led system.
See, this will happen. I mean, let's be honest about that. Anything which grows will again go down. That's what history tells us. My point is, today's the old Lutyens being replaced by new ones. After 10 years, they will also try to play similar rules. My only thing is that, one, I'm happy that at least someone has come and opened the gates. I'm very
Right.
categorical about it. I will not defend. I know that 10 years down the line, these people will also try to do the same thing. Everyone wants to be elite. Everyone wants to have
Yes.
power. So
True.
they will try to do the same thing. I believe that what has happened in the last seven decades will not be repeated again, because, one, this country is also waking up. This is a very aspirational country. That country was very socialistic in very approach. Very changes were very slow. You can see it. Today's generation will not accept it. And one of the reasons why I know Modi, I always believe that Modi is a great tactician, strategician, and politician, because he could see through. Like, he also didn't join the Lutyens Delhi. Do you think that Lutyens Delhi happily co-opted him? Happily, after
True.
5 years
Very
to
true.
29, he also didn't want to, because that he is sending a larger message. See, I'm an outsider. So that's what it is. So I'm hopeful about this country, this Naya Bharat, as you call it, because this generation is more more rooted now. They are more. They know more about the country. They want to know more about their civilization roots, ethos, and also they're very aspirational. They
True.
look ahead. They're not looking
Absolutely.
backwards. That's why I think sometimes we say that we are looking back at roots. Are we going to stuck with the past? We will not, because we are very aspirational people. We also are looking at our feet are firmly planted on civilization ethos, but our eyes are firmly placed in 2047.
Absolutely. I'll now move to the third part of it, which is the diplomacy. So, one basic question to start with: how you think diplomacy has changed under the PM Modi era?
Uh, I think in my book, Bharat Rising, I call it brave new diplomacy in an uncertain world. And I genuinely believe that this Modi Jaishankar Jugalbandi has done a decent job, quite a good job in pushing India's interest forward. Uh, but as I say that, I'll do a disservice to others who actually started the process, like
Yeah.
Narasimha Rao and Atal
Right.
Bihari Vajpayee. We should pay tribute to them. It was they who actually took the first first
True.
step towards what call it India first diplomacy.
Right.
उससे पहले हमारी India first diplomacy नहीं होती थी, हमारी ideology first diplomacy
Absolutely.
होती थी. Where if America offers us a UNSC seat, we'll say no, please give it to हमारे भाई को दे दो. China.
True.
It doesn't happen in India first diplomacy. Why, यार? Take it. This country आपका नहीं है, भैया. This country is of the Indians. They deserve to be up there. So, but when you think from ideological prim and you're obsessed about that, then you commit that mistake. So the change started from 1991, and P.V. Narasimha Rao, I really look up at him, and I believe that we give him his due.
True.
And
Well,
but 2014, we see a marked change in the way we start dealing with the world. And three challenges I can still directly look at that. In fact, I'll add four to that also. COVID-19, China is there, COVID-19 is there. Then what happened in Ukraine and Gaza. And look at the way these were very challenging, and India was particularly in a very precarious situation because India also had a good relation with
yeah.
Russia. But look how India turned that challenge into an opportunity. Today we are well placed. We actually turned an opportunity for us. We actually did well in the Ukraine crisis, and we should be happy
Absolutely.
about it. We should be proud about that. But my point is still it's too early, and because things are still it's an uncertain world as I call it. So next 10 years will be 10 to 15 years will be very
Very
important
important.
how things go. If China is up there. China is still up there. They'll see looking at us, challenging it directly to us. But I'm hopeful, especially one example gives the fourth thing I want to give about Pakistan, for instance. The way by not indulging in dialogue with them, we have completely changed our 70 years of Pakistan policy.
Pakistan
And
policy.
sometimes I believe that not talking is the best form of
Right.
diplomacy also. Because
Absolutely.
whenever we talk to them, we had a spike in terror attack.
Absolutely.
Statistically, that's a fact. That's
Yes.
that's fact. And what can we talk to them? I mean, they still remain the same where they want to
Very.
destroy us.
Absolutely.
Anti-Indiaism is in their gene. So yeah.
True. So you talked to have specific chapters in the book on US and China, and also I have a question about US. You said you very well analyzed, how it has been since independence. That efforts were not made by Pandit Nehru to make better relations with US, and at that time US was more pro-India, and then after you can say 90s it started changing. I have one question. You mentioned that India and US can be friends but not really allies. And I think I would like to quote Henry Kissinger here, who once famously said to be America's enemy is dangerous, but to be America's friend is fatal. So, in the context
Yeah.
of that, which came from none other than the Henry Kissinger, how do you see India being friends or allies with the US?
I'll just add to that and say that yeah, it actually suits India to be the friend of the US and the West rather than allies. But the moment we have allies, then you have to attack Russia or you have to become completely take sides. India doesn't need to take sides, and
Right.
India will take sides where its interest lies, and we should do that way. And unfortunately, India's interests and West interests are different, will remain
Yes.
different.
Absolutely.
And that's why I believe that India can at best be friends, if not frenemies. But allies, I find it very difficult because they have completely different worldviews. I look at this, China is staring at our border and they opened the doors in Ukraine. And any silly person could have seen that. Russia could have been, in an ideal world, an ally of America,
Yeah.
especially when Putin himself wanted to be part of the Western order.
Yeah.
He wanted to be. Till 2010, he was actually eager to push. Even Bill Clinton said that.
True.
But these Americans and American deep state, I think they still, or maybe the arms industry, they
Right.
still want to create a demon out of Russia. So what they have done, they have now pushed Putin on the laps of Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping is laughing all the more. So that's where India and West cannot. Our interest doesn't doesn't match on many counts. But still, I believe that India and West needs to work together because
Absolutely.
there are many similarities, and I personally believe that we missed the bus in 50s. If you see
Yes.
the
Yes.
40s,
True.
Americans were absolutely in favor of India's
Yes. Yes.
independence. Actually, Winston Churchill was laughing when we refused the Cripps mission. And I have been listening to a chapter in detail about that. Ever
Sri
Sri
Aurobindo
Aurobindo,
also wrote that this is
sent,
the
yeah,
moment we could have
sent
avoided
him,
many
yeah,
problems had we
yeah,
been that
yeah. So,
understanding was there.
in fact, I believe, and I quoted many people that saying that partition also happened. There might be reason because we faltered there. We didn't handle 40s very well,
Yeah.
and we have still not even analyzed it. We have not analyzed it. We may call 1,000 other reasons, But had we handled our forties
Yeah,
well, and we could have maybe escaped many of the post-independence blues which we
absolutely.
faced. And one of the biggest problem was we chose wrong
Right.
allies in the Cold War.
No, no, that's very true. So, okay, one last question before I open it to the audience. So, all those who are watching, if you have any question, please write it in the comment box. I will take it up with Utpal as I ask my last question. So, Utpal, the last question is about China. Like we say that Indian diplomacy has been doing really well compared to last couple of decades. We have, have been able to, counter China to an extent. But how do you see the future in the light of, China still being a very strong nation? Its recent economic performance notwithstanding, because as of now, we cannot say if this is a trend or just an aberration from the trend. And also the fact that we have to, fight China not just economically but also militarily, and also under the threat of AI, because it's an open secret that US and China are ruling the world when it comes to advancements in artificial intelligence. So, how, in the context of these challenges, do you see the future of India-China relations?
Uh, I totally believe that India and China is a current and is a danger, and it will remain danger for India for decades at least. And unfortunately, I don't think there can be any hard and fast, diplomatic manual in dealing with China. Because they keep on updating. Chinese are very smart that way. They keep on
True.
updating themselves. They always look at the enemy and what right now they're doing. They're lazy and they're looking at how we are going to react to that. So
True.
they prepare for
Yes,
long term. They're already building roads.
absolutely.
So they're doing. So it's very difficult to do. How to predict how we should deal with China. The best thing is I think we should be always be prepared. We should always be ready that China won't be our friends. I think that's first thing, the clarity of mind. Shatrubodh I call it. In the term called in Hindi.
Yeah,
शत्रुबोध होना जरूरी है.
right.
For most decades, post-independent decades, we didn't have the Shatrubodh. We didn't realize that Pakistan is our enemy. हम उनकी बिरयानी खा के खुश हो जाते थे. We didn't
Exactly.
realize that China can't be our friends. If you can't anybody read Kautilya at least, you will realize that these people
Right.
can't be our friends. So the Mandala theory of Kautilya. So the thing is, yeah, and I believe that next 10 years is very crucial. Next 10 years you'll find, and that's why I think this election and the election after that, you'll see a lot of interferences, subtle or direct, indirect, whatever, coming from abroad also. Because next 10 years will be absolutely crucial where India finds itself. One wrong step, and we'll be again back to square one. And that's what they're looking at. That's what.
True.
So
True.
till now we have done well. I believe that the moment we will be 10 to $15 trillion economy, things will
Yeah.
start to ease a bit.
Yes.
This is my take. I don't know, but I believe that things will start because then the way we will go too
Right.
big for the to take on the directly.
Right.
So, but right now the problem is there, and we should take Chinese threat very seriously and on a day-to-day basis. And we should not have any illusion about peaceful
Oh, true. Very true.
coexistence with them, at least now.
Absolutely. I think to sum it up, I think the most important thing in dealing with China is actually to understand China, which I believe is the most difficult thing to do, to actually understand. It's a more like a secret country. But as you
Right.
mentioned, yes, with such the state of diplomacy, we just hope that things would definitely improve for India in the global world and India in the domestic level as well. So with that, I would like so thank you very much for attending. I would like to check if there are any questions or comments. So guys, you still have time. If anyone has any question, you can please ask. So there is okay, from Comrade Shivaji. It's a question. British used divide and rule policy. So if we again get divided on religious lines, as you say, learn from history, then what we learn from it?
Uh, yeah, we shouldn't get divided. Absolutely, I agree. But history, we should definitely learn from history. And my history says that that first thing is that we should never negate history.
Right.
First, we should report history correctly. Then only we can learn. Right now, the history which my audience and when we all read is not the right history. first of all, we should accept that part.
True.
That history has many problems, many issues. That history is still written from the invader's perspective, as we call it. The history where Vijayanagar Empire is not there, Chola Empire is not there. A home is not there.
Yeah.
A home is 500 years. The only
Yes.
empire which defeated Mughals at the height of their power.
True.
I think 90% people will not even know that.
Don't-
My point is, these people also, yeah. So history cannot be Delhi centric. So first, let's correct the history, and then we'll learn from the history. I think that should be the right, correct forward. And as far as I know from where he's coming. He's coming from all the temple aspects and all these things. I think I think we should be mature enough not to blame today's generation for what happened in the past. But
Absolutely.
the people who are actually denying that, they assuming that way. We shouldn't assume that. We shouldn't. There's no capability of today's generation of what Muhammad bin Tughlaq did, or what Aurangzeb did, or what others did. Today's generation are as Indian as I and you and everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. So, okay, then no more questions. I think we can end the session. But guys, all those who are watching, as I say, this is one book. Though I'm yet to come up with an official review video, but I do strongly recommend this book if you really want to see how India is transitioning. I think this is the book to be read. So, a definite recommendation from my end. And Utpal, thank you so much for first of all
Thank you.
writing
It
this
was,
great book and the session. And
thank,
I just hope to have more and more books from you.
thank you. Look forward to. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. Thank you.